Good evening. My name is Dr. Tom Moir. My background is that I'm an engineer, or really an educator more than an engineer, because I spent my whole life as an academic. My last job was an associate professor at a New Zealand university. I specialise in control systems and signal processing. I've got a couple of books written, lots of papers on the subject. But I'm not really here to talk to you about engineering or physics, at least not at the moment anyway. What I'm here to talk about is something that happened a very long time ago. And in fact, it happened in 1971 when I was 13 years old. I'm 66 years old now. And my sister, who was with me a lot of the time, she's 2 years older. She's living in England. Now I live now in New Zealand, in the North Island of New Zealand, in Auckland. And back then I lived in I wouldn't call it a small house, it was quite a nice house actually. They called it a cottage though. Muckle's Cottage it was called. It was left by my great auntie Sarah actually, who lived there, and she was given it by her father, I think it was, who was my I think it was Uncle George or something like that actually, who was quite a well-off farmer I think at the time. So we were left this house, but it was kind of in the back of beyond. Well, it is compared with where I've lived since, of course, and been since, and that certainly at the time it's a very kind of remote place. Certainly, if you've been to somewhere like London or something, and then you go there, then you notice a huge difference, and it would have probably been a lot more in 1971. So let me explain a little bit about 1971, because a lot of you be younger than me, obviously. Some of you won't be, and I don't want to bore you with it all. But back in 1971, technology was a little bit more basic than it is now, in that we didn't all have cameras. If we did have cameras, they were photographic cameras. There was, to my knowledge, no digital cameras unless you were NASA or something like that. There were, of course, portable TV cameras, these big things that you could hold, and video. They were just coming out around that time. But people didn't go about with mobile phones because there simply wasn't any cellular phone networks around at that time, although the theory, believe it or not, had probably been invented before then. We were just kind of waiting for the technology to catch up, funnily enough. There was no personal computers. There were certainly mainframe computers, but there was the microprocessor wasn't invented for a couple of years after that actually, and computers in the sense of home computers didn't really start making their way into people's homes till about 77, 78, maybe something round about that time. And they were quite rudimentary machines. You programmed them in BASIC, but we thought they were fantastic, of course, when they came out. But again, I'm not really here to talk about technology, that kind of technology so much. I have a YouTube channel on technology, and technology, of course, has always fascinated me my whole life. I think the first thing that spurred my interest was radios. How the hell did a radio work, for example? That sort of made me think maybe I wanted to do something when I was older on engineering or something, but I didn't really understand what it was all about at all. And then when eventually we got our first TV, when I would have been about 5 years old, I think. I was even more fascinated because I couldn't figure out how could these little men be walking about in the TV. And I remember asking my father, how the hell does that work? But nobody could actually explain to me how it worked, funnily enough, whoever I asked. And not that really mattered that much at that time. And like many people of my era, of course, I would take things apart and try and understand, and eventually take books from the library, in our school library, which was quite good actually, and dismantle things and so on. So I had a keen interest in technology. However, before that, when I was very young, the first thing that happened of interest was now to get to school, I had to go down. I'm going to show you pictures of this soon on Google. I had to go down a road from our house, an avenue, and then another road, sort of country road, which took me to it wasn't a dual carriageway there, it was a very fast going 2-lane road which went from Aberdeen to Stonehaven. Aberdeen, of course, being in Scotland. So this is where the story takes place. It's true stories, all of it, about my childhood. And I'd have to walk down there in the morning, across this blooming main road. It was really dangerous. And then catch a bus to school, and then catch a bus home from Stonehaven. Now, Stonehaven is a very small town. It's not really dangerous there. There's not much that could really happen to you in those days. And when I came back off the bus, it came back at the left-hand side of the road, so it wasn't as dangerous coming back as it was going. But when you were in the first couple of years of school in Scotland, and I think probably the same in England, you left school a little bit earlier. Now, normally it's different from New Zealand and probably other countries. And of course, we didn't go to school on a Saturday, not that you do in New Zealand either. But we would finish school at 3 o'clock when in primary 1, in the first year of primary school. And at 3:30, I think it was in primary 2. I think it was 3:30. And then from 4 o'clock onwards after that. So when I was, I think, in primary 1, but it could have been primary 2 because it really was a very long time ago. So I would have been about 5 or 6 years old, or something like that. I would have come back home quite early because school would have finished probably 3:30 or 3 o'clock. And it's still kind of broad daylight. I got off the bus at this place near Muckles Village, but not actually at Muckles Village. And again, I'll show you that on the map. But near Muckles Village, it was called Muckles Crossroads. I got off the bus and I started walking home. Now, walking home would have taken me maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes. Of course, when I was younger, it would have taken me maybe longer than it would have done. There was nobody there to pick me up. I think Mum probably would have done the first couple of days, but then she just left, as it was in those days, they just left you to get on with it, sort of thing. There was no cars around to pick you up, and chauffeur you to school or anything like there is today. And in fact, we didn't even have a car, although my father was a motor mechanic, and my mother used to say, whoever had a motor mechanic without a car. But anyway, that was the way it was. So I was walking back up this lonely road, but it was light, and I was just, looking around, and I don't know what I was thinking about. And I just glanced up, and sailing over my head, now this is the first occasion, was this object that would have been, I don't know, I would have explained it. It was like something out of Fireball XL5 or what was it, Thunderbirds or something. It was like a little space thing that just sailed over my head. I couldn't remember any kind of any kind of noise at all, but it sailed over my head. And when I looked at it, I could see it wasn't very high up at all. I mean, it was only two or three times higher than the power lines. The power lines were overground there. It wasn't very high, two or three times the height of the trees. So I got a good look at it, and it had a little cockpit like a, I suppose like a fighter jet would have been really, like an F-16 or something like that. But there wasn't any noise coming from it, and it just and it wasn't going very fast. It just sort of went over me, and I couldn't see any wings on it either. It was just like a tube with this little cockpit, but I can't remember seeing anybody in the cockpit or anything like that. But on the back was this like an aerial sticking up, and there was a couple of other aerials coming off of it, and they had lights on them, and I can't remember the colours of the lights, and they just sort of flickered on and off, and that just sailed over my head. Nothing happened. I mean, I didn't, I just thought, I wonder what the hell that is. And as I say, if I hadn't looked up, I probably wouldn't have even spotted it until it was past. Now I told my mum, and she said to me, as I remember at the time, she said, "Oh, it must have been one of those rocket planes." I never heard of a rocket plane. I'm still not sure what a rocket plane is, but I think they did have such things. So this would have been about 1963 or something like that. And I believe there was things they called rocket planes back then. It's probably the precursors to jet aircraft. I'm not really sure what they were. But certainly this thing had no noise, but it never occurred to me, of course, that, about the noise thing at all. It never sort of entered my head that it should have made a hell of a din, really, if it was. And it probably should have been going hell of fast. So anyway, that was the first time, and nothing really happened. And then a couple of years later, I was coming off the bus again, and it would have been, it might have been slightly later, but it's still daylight anyway. I got to about the same place as I was before, because I did actually used to look around me then. I thought, I wonder if that thing I saw before would ever be there again, whatever it was, because it kind of interested me, because as I say, it was like something out of International Rescue or something that you'd see on the kids' TV, the Jetsons or something. Not sure if the Jetsons was out then, but anyway. But I did, one day I was coming home, and another thing went over my head, and this time it wasn't the same as before. It was a rectangular object, and it had this about, I wouldn't say half of it, but one half of it was sort of hewn out, and there was an enormous light that just flashed on, off, and this object just floated over my head again. And I think it might have been green or something. I'm not really sure can't remember what the colour was. And there was no aerial sticking up this time or anything again. But again, this thing just floated over my head. I think I told my mum about it, and that would have been about 67, maybe something. I'm not really sure. Or 60. Well, less than that, maybe 63 or 4 or something like that. Anyway, nothing really happened for years, but I had noticed at night time, and I'd not really given it any thought, that when the surrounding area there seemed to be these funny lights that just flashed on and off, and they were red, and they just that's all they did basically, just on, off, like 1 flash per second, 1 hertz, on, off, on, off. But again, I didn't give it much thought, and I was a very sceptical young man as well, young boy. In fact, my mum in particular used to call me Doubting Thomas, because my name's Tom, of course, because I never believed in anything, and I'd always be asking questions about things, how come, in religion and things as well, how do you know that's real, that actually happened, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I apart from seeing these things kind of in the distance, nothing really happened, much significance. Then on the 13th of December in 1971, which was I think it was a Monday actually, because I kind of remember it. I had to go to. I was back home a bit later than normal. It might have been the first time, because one of the things I was quite good at, well, I thought I was quite good at, probably wasn't that good at, was playing the piano. And I'd had piano lessons since I was about 4 or 5 from our neighbour, and she was apparently she was an ex-virtuoso or something, and she was teaching me piano, but she had to go in, and she'd caught dementia or something, and we could no longer use her, and so Dad had arranged some lessons in Stonehaven, and I don't think I was really that good, to be honest. By that time I was losing interest in it, but anyway, I had to go, and I felt obliged to go anyway. And I would go to these lessons in Stonehaven about 4:30, and the lessons would have been 1 hour, I think, if I remember. It's not like today, where you probably just get a half an hour lesson or something. Everything was like an hour. Pretty sure it was an hour anyway. And then I had to catch the normal bus home. So I walked into Stonehaven. It was up in Brickfield or somewhere with these lessons, or in Stonehaven. I walked down into Stonehaven, caught the bus back, and on that particular night, as with all nights around that time, October, November, December, it was very, very dark, and the village, although I didn't live in the village, I'll explain again when I show you the map. I didn't live in the village, but the village had no street lights, so you could see the lights of the village, but that was on the other side of the crossroads. I lived completely on the other side, about a quarter of a mile away or something. But you could see them, but there was no other lights apart from the odd farmhouse. Probably you might see it, I think, our outside light. Dad used to put that on sometimes, so I could see that. So I had to carry a torch with me, and we all did. Otherwise it might end up in the ditch. Actually, it was so dark. You saw this sky, really, really nice. So I was walking back there, and just walked up the usual road, when one of these red lights appeared. And again, I had seen them before, but it never really, really registered that much, as I say. I wondered what it was, but I thought, so what? And it was on the right hand side of me. And then I looked to my left, and there was another one on the left hand side, and I thought, what is it, two? What's there two doing here? I thought, there must be helicopters, because I thought back then in 1971 it was about the start of the oil industry, and I thought, well, that explains that sort of thing. Must just have been helicopters. And then I looked ahead of me, and there was another one. It was sort of probably not far from our house, which was straight ahead. But again, I didn't really think much. And I was walking along, the one to my right, it felt almost as if it was kind of moving with me, but that could have been just, when you see things at night, sometimes you do think things are moving when they're, with you, when they're not necessarily. But as it turns out, it was actually moving, because by the time I got up to walk up to the avenue, which was the final part before I got to my house, again I'll show you a picture of this, the one on the right hand side had kind of moved, was closer in the sense it had moved with me, and it was what was I remember? Oh yeah, it kind of dipped down, if I remember rightly, kind of out of position. I looked to my left, and there was another one to my left, and there was still one in front of me, and I was kind of surrounded by these things, but still I didn't really think anything much. I thought, what it is, what it is. Then I looked sort of in front of me to walk up the avenue, and there was something standing, I don't know how many, 10 yards away, maybe, something like that, in front of me, and it just glowed. It just looked like I can't remember the colour now, what it was, whether it was green, I'm not really sure. I can't honestly remember. And it had a head, and actually I thought it was somebody standing there it had a dress like a Victorian woman or something like that, because I thought couldn't understand why there would be anything there, but it scared the shit out of me because it was just in front of where I was actually going in that direction. And I kind of froze. Now, I don't think there was no kinds of beams of light or anything sort of being fired at me as I can remember. I just kind of froze through fear. It never really happened to me again, or since that time. But it was almost like slow motion. As I was walking, I just, what the hell is that sort of thing? And I looked at it and I was trying to reason to myself, what the hell is it? And I thought, there must be somebody standing there. And there was a house near there. It's a very small house. And I thought it must be that my friend lived there from school. He was in a different year from me. And I thought, I think he had a grandmother or something who used to, and I thought, it must be her, because I'd heard she was a bit batty or something, and she was maybe just standing there, So it took an awful lot of courage for me just to take one step forward, and this thing just disappeared. I mean, like, it wasn't there. That in itself was quite a shock to me, because things just don't disappear. I later, of course, I theorised maybe there wasn't really anything there at all, that it was being projected in front of me, perhaps. But anyway, it was something there, and it had gone. And I then had to go through this where the thing had been standing, and that scared the shit out of me as well. And I went up to my house, and I think I was really in a state of shock. Because I didn't understand really what was happening. I was kind of shaking, but Mum gave me my supper, or whatever we called it. I could barely eat much, but I said to my sister, and my mum as well. My dad, I think, he'd had his own garage by then. He was working in the garage. I said, "My God, you never guess what I saw. These strange things in the sky. I don't know what they are." And she says, "Oh, come on, we better go down and have a look." And I thought, "Are you sure about this?" She said, yeah, okay. So my sister would have been 15, I was 13. We went to the bottom of the avenue, and I stood where I'd seen this thing, and I said to her, "That's where I saw that thing." And I turned to the right, and I said, and there was no lights there, there was nothing. It's like they'd all bloody gone, And I said, "That's funny," I said, because the one I saw to my right, it looked as if it was landing or something. It just sort of disappeared out of view. But the road, I have to remind you, was actually, it went up and down a camber on the road, so it could have been below my viewing. I'm not saying it did land, because I couldn't say it did, but it went out of my view. But as I spoke that, no sooner said that sentence, it came up into view again. And my sister said to me, come on, let's go after it." What? And she disappears. And I thought, oh my God. So I had to go after her. Not so much to save her, but because I was scared of being there on my own, really. I thought, God, what if that other thing, it turns up again? So I ran after her, and we went. It went near the church. There's a church next door to us called St Ternan's Church, which was an Scottish Episcopal church. And I knew the minister. He was actually a canon there, Canon Buchanan, very well, because it was his wife who was teaching me piano lessons. But he wasn't around. There was a lot of trees in those days. But this thing was kind of above the road, and sister got there before me, and then I arrived, and it just, again, no noise, it just slowly came right over our heads. Now when it was over our heads, it stopped, and we looked up at it, and I can't remember what we said to each other, but I can remember a circle of little tiny lights, and as I remember, they were all red. And don't ask me whether they're all synchronized, or I can't honestly remember, but from the distance all you could see was, it's like it was one light and just went on, off, on, off, on, off like that. But when we were underneath it, it was a circle of little lights, and it just hung over our heads. I was not a real, later I suppose you'd call it, like from something from the X-Files or something. That wasn't until the 1990s, of course, like 20 years later or something. And I'd not really read about such things, what they were. Or I didn't really have much idea. But, your imagination does take a leap when you immediately think, Jesus, this is something like aliens or something is here. I mean, because I'd never seen a technology like that. I mean, at that time I was still at school, so I wasn't some kind of technology expert. But I did know as much that helicopters made a hell of a din, especially if they were right above you, which this thing was, and helicopters weren't circular either. I knew that much. And I knew it wasn't a plane, because again, planes, they don't hover unless it was a Harrier jump jets were around, but they make a hell of a din as well. And they can only stay in the air for a certain amount of time anyway, same with helicopters. So this thing didn't stay that long over our heads. Once it went from the north part of the road over our heads to the south, and it ended up over this little plantation, I think the Winewood or Windward plantation or something it's called on the map, if you get an Ordnance Survey map. And that is a little piece of land. We used to call it the Big Wood. There's nothing there really. There was horses, which they were owned by the horses were owned by the people that owned Muckles Castle, because Muckles Castle was not that far from us really. I mean, you could probably walk over there in half an hour maybe or something like that. But it stayed there and it flashed away above this hill. I don't know, I can't remember about the other ones where they went. Didn't seem to be much. And I don't know, maybe my sister was still there till maybe I think 11 o'clock at night or something. I'd gone to bed by then, and I was really quite disturbed by it, to be honest. I asked her the next day, and she said, yeah, it was there till 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and she'd went to bed. It was still there. And as you know, it's not going to be anything we would have made that could do that, and there was no noise from it either. Neither was it randomly sort of blowing in the wind, so it wasn't a balloon or something like that. And of course it had intent, it knew where we was, it came over our heads, went down, went back up again, so on. So the next day, although I was actually that night, I couldn't really get to sleep at all. I was scared about this thing coming back. I thought if it can appear in front of me in the avenue, maybe it can appear in my bedroom as well. So I really was scared, but I mean, it's nowhere to turn to. My sister was sympathetic, but I don't think she'd not seen this thing. I don't think she'd really, and I was a bit younger than her as well. I didn't have the maturity to really take it in. So the first thing I did was, when I got to school, in a kind of stunned sort of way the next day, is during the science class, I said to one of the teachers, I explained what I'd seen, and I thought he's going to be fascinated by this, because even then I knew that if such things did exist, it would be like the discovery of almost Nobel Prize winning discovery, such a thing, if it was real. But what you have to remember is in 1971, it was a different time completely from now. People, as I find out I didn't really know, people that saw such things were taken to be something wrong with our heads, basically, not some kind of mental problem. The teacher said to me, "Oh, you saw that, did you?" He said, "Were you looking through the bottle of a whiskey bottle at the time?" And I was kind of stunned, because I mean, I'd never had a drink in my life at that time. I mean, that probably made up for it, when I got to age 18 or whatever, but certainly age 13 or whatever, I certainly never drunk anything, never been anywhere near alcohol. And that was it. He walked away. And I thought, well, I'm not really going to get anything much out of the adults, am I? So, and I felt kind of humiliated as well, because I'd said that. A few people had heard me, it wasn't like I'd said it in front of the whole class, but I'd sort of summoned the teacher and said, please, sir, can you explain this? And I felt totally kind of humiliated, and I thought, well, I think there's not much point in telling teachers or anybody in authority. I thought if I told police about it, it would probably be even worse. They'd probably, I'd get into some kind of trouble over it. Again, back in those days, there wasn't sympathy for children like there is now. It's okay, Johnny, sort of thing, you'll get over it. Here's some comforting words. There's none of that stuff. It was just, you stupid little whatever, hit you and tell you to get on with life. That was the way things were back then, certainly in Scotland. And I think, to be honest, a wee bit more sympathetic in England, but certainly in Scotland they were like that. But I understand why people thought that way, because it was so out of their experience. Now, if that had been the end of it, I would have probably forgotten it. Well, not forgotten it, but I would have still remembered it, but I would have put it behind me and kind of moved on and not thought a lot about it. But the following night, would have been that Tuesday, I think, the 14th or whatever, Alison, my sister, said to me, hey, let's go down again and have another look. And I thought, oh my God, there's no telling what can happen, But she said, no, let's go down. So we went down again. And sure enough, there was another of these red lights. And now it didn't come anywhere near us. This is what the interesting thing was. If anything, if we tried to go near it in the future, from then on, they didn't really come that close. They stayed away from us. It's like they weren't interested in us, or they'd seen us and thought, well, no, whatever it is isn't really much good to us. But a pattern emerged, because every single night of the week, and I wouldn't be exaggerating on this, we'd go down, because it was so interesting. Well, I'd still be scared as hell. So we'd go down, and the pattern that emerged was these things, they weren't on their own, as had not been on the first night. They had appeared in usually 2s and 3s. The odd occasion you'd see 4. Now, actually, on that first night there might have even been 4, but again, there's at least 3. It was almost as if one was looking out. So there was always one kind of up here somewhere in the sky, and there was another one down near the ground level, actually, I should have pointed out, when we looked up at the first night, the night before, it wasn't very high up. I mean, it wasn't like it was miles away. It was only, again, like what it had been when I was about 5 years old, maybe twice the height of the trees or something like that. And the size of it would have been, I don't know, maybe the size of a garage or something like that. Not absolutely ginormous by any means, but it was fairly big. I couldn't see the top of it, could only see underneath it. So these things would, what they'd do is they'd go from house to house, or farm to farm rather. Although funnily enough, it didn't seem to come over our house. I don't know why. But they'd go, if I get up if I was out at the right time, they'd often pass over the church or something like that near us, and they'd end up over, it's called Cairn Hill direction, which there's houses in now, but there wasn't any. Well, there was only a few houses then, a couple of farms, but there's like tons of houses there now. I'll show you this on the map, on the Google map, on Street View. And they'd go to Greenhead's farm, which wasn't that far away. They'd sort of stay above the house or the barn of the Greenheads. I don't know what they were doing. Again, the only thing in the barn would have been cows. Maybe they were interested in animals as well. Maybe it wasn't just humans they were looking at. So they stayed above the barn where the byres, they would have called it then, in Scotland, in that part of Scotland. And it went up above the roof, and it would just stay above the roof for, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe. And then very slowly it would move off and go to another house and our farm and go over the roof of that, stay for 5 minutes, go to another one. And then it would end up at Cookney or somewhere. And they were always there. I mean, it's like they were never not there. I mean, you'd just go out and you'd look around, and sure enough, within a short space of time, you'd see one of them. And it's almost as if one was on the lookout and the other one or two was doing whatever they had to do. Now, planes would come over our area on the way to Dicey Airport, but we kind of knew when a plane was coming, because what would happen is the one that was, not just one of them, but the one that was in the sky would suddenly come down low, and then you'd hear the rumble of a plane, and the plane would fly over and it would come back up again. I remember my sister, pointed that. She was kind of more observant than I was about it. The other thing was when the clocks changed, it would have been the following year or whatever, or whenever the clocks changed, I don't know what it was, they would come, they'd still be there at the same time doing the same thing. It's not like, it's almost, it was like clockwork almost. They had a job to do, they were doing it, and we weren't really, didn't seem to be getting in the way. And we weren't stopping them in any way, and we'd watch them. And this went on so my sister was 15, so she went to university in Aberdeen, I think, when she did 6 years, so she would have been 18, I think, so that would have been 15, 3 years later, so 74, something like 74. So when she left to go to uni, I was on my own. She lived in Aberdeen in a hall of residence or something, and I would be left on my own then, and I'd go down and I'd still see them, and I'd watch them, and they're in a number of places that they'd come, similar as before. Sometimes, on a few occasions, they'd come quite close. One occasion I remember, one came quite close near the church where we'd first seen it, but it didn't come over my head. I was getting quite scared because I didn't really want it to come over my head. Another occasion, I was out round the back of the house because we had quite a lot of land, about an acre of land or something, and round the back of this house, and there was one in the field, because I could just see it. It had landed in the field, and I could just see it. It just took off, flashing, flash, came up. It didn't go over our house. It went probably in the other directions, over towards Cairn Hill. But it was at the back of our house, and again, that scared the hell out of me. The thought of that. A lot of the time they were over that Winwood plantation thing. They'd hang around there quite a lot. And so this went on and on and on. And I just watched them and came to the conclusion that they were obviously surveying the people in the area. They were watching everybody, what was going on. Now, they didn't go to Muckles village. That's important. At least I never saw them over, but I'm not saying they didn't, but I never saw them over Muckles village at all. I just saw them at our side. And I think I'd seen them deeper in towards Cookney direction when I'd been on my bike as well, because I used to kind of go around on my bike, sort of chasing them at night, and but kind of scared because I didn't want them to come too close to me. Now, I never, as I say, got as close as we did that first night, but they were there every single night of the week really. And I remember I used to do my homework. I was studying for my higher exams, and I'd be memorising things, even my old grades as well. I had to do history, and I remember memorising dates and things like that, and coming down and just remember as I was doing my homework, as I was looking at them actually, or I'd be in my higher grades, I'd be thinking about calculus or something, how to differentiate trigonometric functions, and these things would be there going over the houses. My sister kept a diary, and before she went to uni, and she kept some of the nights that she'd been at. It kind of got boring in the end. I mean, we didn't all go necessarily every single night. When I say every, I mean, because it was bad weather sometimes and fog. You get a lot of fog there, so we didn't go down. If it was a nice night, we'd sometimes say, "Oh, it's a nice night for UFOs," so we'd go down, and there they were again. You know. Then I went to college in Sheffield, which is an amazing part of the northern England with some incredible people. Although the people weren't all from Sheffield, they were from all over the United Kingdom and different countries as well. And for the first time I actually got a chance to talk to people from outside my little area, and of course found out quickly that what we'd seen was by no means well, pretty unique, I'd say. You know, nobody'd ever had anything like that. And I suppose when I was in first year, it was quite popular because I used to tell people about it, and they were interested in it. There was a few people at school who I talked to, and there was a couple of guys who were twins who lived over Cairn Hill direction. There's an estate which was owned by the Duke of Fife or his son, I can't remember, the Earl of South Esk. It's all kind of walled in, but I think their father worked there. There were a couple of twins, and I told them about what they seen, and they said they'd seen something similar as well, because they lived on the other side. They were younger than me, they used to call me Spaceman as a nickname on the bus. I remember, "Hey, it's Spaceman, what did you see?" But anyway, when I was at college, I had some interesting tales to tell. And then my first Christmas home, because I would have went in June, July, and then I came home in Christmas time on the train, got off the train. My dad gave me a lift back from Stonehaven. The next night or something, or maybe the same night, I'd go out and they'd be there again. They'd still be there. And no difference. Right up to, I remember in 1978, I think it was 1978, because on the news, it was Hogmanay on 31st of December, I think it was 1978, and it mentioned New Zealand. Of course, I'd never been to New Zealand in my life. And it said that this UFO had been filmed over New Zealand. It was in the 10 o'clock news, 10:30. And I remember looking at it was just, I don't know what it was, but apparently they chased this thing on, in a plane or something around some part of New Zealand, and I wasn't sure even now where it was. It was easier to find out. But I'd just been outside and seen them around our houses, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So they're in New Zealand as well. But it wasn't like a one-off. They seemed to have been here for, all the time I'd seen them, and probably much earlier. Now, a few years later, I think I'd had come back to Scotland. I lived in Paisley, and in the west of Scotland, and I used to go back to Mum and Dad's, of course. And again, they'd still be there, about that time. And I'd, go out looking for them as well. Eventually got married, and I brought my new wife back to see my parents, and we stayed in a different room, when we were married. And I told her about it, of course. Her name was Lydia. And I can't remember if she woke me up, but I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was awake, And she says, I didn't want to waken you, she says, but there was these funny red things out the window, she says, and they've been doing like a dance in this direction, in that direction. It's like they had a tunnel and they went through it. I can't remember all the things she says. It's been quite fascinating watching them. And I saw one of them and they kind of disappeared after that. But so she saw them from the bedroom. I had never knew that, and that scared me as well, because I used to go up on my own often. She didn't always come with me to see my parents for various reasons. And I stayed in that room. I was worried that again they'd come next to and maybe they were coming to the house after all, and maybe that's what was happening. Yeah, so one of the things that had worked out was that Dad had always, Mum used to come down the next day and she said I didn't believe in abductions or anything, but Mum would say, oh, Dad had another of his nights again. And they say, what do you mean one of his nights? Oh, he dreamt he was being operated on. And I used to look at him and he'd say, yeah, oh God, I get these dreams that I'm on an operating table, or people are putting things into me. And I never really thought much about it. I thought, because I think I'd had dreams like that as well. And I just thought, people, I think I looked it up somewhere, and, it's a fear of, doctors or something, because they don't like doctors. I mean, I've never liked the thought, having been through a heart operation myself, I don't really like the idea of people cutting me up, and I don't know anybody who really does, and I just put it down to that. But I just wondered if there was a connection. I don't think there is, but we did. Certainly my father used to get that a lot. But there's an even more interesting tale. Again, I never put two and two together at all, and it's a funny story about technology. And of course we had the old TVs, which were, even in the days, would have been 65 lines, I think, or something like that, as I remember. It's a long time ago. Analog TV system. And we always had second-hand TVs. Now, a certain time, and it would have been around the 70s, early 70s, we'd bought a colour TV, a second-hand one from a shop. We could never afford a new one. Bought a second-hand one from a shop in Aberdeen. Really nice guy. The guy had only one hand, I remember. He also had an artificial hand, the guy who owned the shop. And really, nothing against him. He was really good. But he sold us this TV. And about 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock was about the time that the UFOs appeared. We used to go out to see them. I don't know if they appeared then. 6 o'clock, the TV used to go into white noise, and Mum would say, "Oh God!" She used to blame the minister next door, the canon. So it's him putting his heating on, or something like that, And we've not got enough power to run the TV. But before she did that, she used to blame the TV. So she'd after having to put up with this for about a week, she says, "That's it. I've had enough of this. Taking that TV back again." So we took it back, TV back, and the guy is very apologetic, and he basically just give her another TV. We took it home again. 6 o'clock. I remember at 6 was about the time for the news. It would go shh, and the picture would go off. I go, what the bloody hell is it? And she says, "Oh no, he sold us another dud TV." She says, "I'm not putting up with this. If it happens again, I'm taking it back again. I just won't put up with it. Although I'm going to write to the Sunday Post, I think it was, to complain about it." As people did. So we took it back again. And this time the guy says, "Look, I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, "I'll put it on, I'll run it flat." And I think we would have called it a soak test in electrical engineering later. I would have found that out. We put it on like for the whole day. He said, came back, I don't know, a week later or something, and he says, "Look, I've had this TV on for the whole week and it's never once gone off. There's nothing wrong with it." He says, "It must be your power. There must be something wrong with your electricity." And she says, "Oh, thanks." And she says, "I knew it." She says, it's the minister next door, the canon next door. He puts on his heaters, and we've not got enough power to power our thing. That's what it is. And that's actually what I thought it was as well. It never, again, dawned on me that it was anything to do with anything else. So what happened then was she rung up Hydroelectric, which was the power company for the Aberdeen area in those days. I don't know what it's called now, the hydropower people. And I remember they came and they put this huge box, it was like this big, connected to our mains, near the fuse box or whatever. And it had a chart on it with a needle. And it was supposed to detect if there was any surges in power. And we thought, we've got him now, we'll find out now. Apparently, nothing. Didn't show anything. No difference in the power. But the power was still doing the same thing. The TV was still going off. So, I don't know how long that went on for, to be honest. I forgot about it. I kind of lost interest in that one. But I thought it was a nice anecdotal story. But once I do recall seeing one of these things near one of the power lines. It was only once, I think. It was very, very close to our power line, and I was wondering whether it was drawing some power. I mean, I wouldn't have thought something with that level of technology would actually need to draw the power off the mains, the human mains line, to be honest. But you never know. They obviously had some kind of incredible technology, though, and this is the thing that interested me, because it wasn't jets or anything. It wasn't the Newtonian mechanics that was keeping it up, which is action and reaction, Newton's laws of motion. That's all our technology is based. How we went to the moon and how Elon Musk is going to Mars on jet engines, well, rocket engines rather, not jets, because that's within the atmosphere, but action and reaction. This didn't have anything. They just seemed to suspend themselves in mid-air, as if they were just nailed up there, and they didn't make any noise either. At least I couldn't hear any noise. So nothing really happened until many years later. I was married and living in Glasgow, and I was working in Paisley at the time. Paisley College, actually, which became Paisley University before I moved to New Zealand. And times were changing, because there was that new TV series that came out in I don't know when it was, would have been 93 or something like that, called The X-Files. And unlike in the past, where if you mentioned UFOs or anything like that, you were seen as some kind of nut, people were beginning, they still thought you were a nut, but are beginning to sort of take things, maybe there is something a bit different, something going on that we don't understand. And because it was people liked The X-Files, there was more stories that appeared in newspapers. And I filled out a thing in a magazine called Omni magazine, which I used to read. I don't know if it exists anymore. And I got contacted by this group of people called the British UFO Research Association. Remember, I wasn't living in that area, I was living in Glasgow. But they were interested in investigating it. This is years after the event. And they sent this guy, I can't remember his name now. And I do remember that one of the investigators, this guy called Malcolm Robinson, know him very well. But he sent somebody else to investigate it. He's an ex-policeman, I think, and he's very thorough. He stuck an advert in the paper saying if anybody had ever seen anything around 70s or whatever, to contact him, without mentioning anything. And none of my stuff was published anywhere. It wasn't in any newspapers or anything, because we never told anybody, because we're kind of too scared. I was too scared in one sense at the time, because I thought people would laugh at me, and then I was also scared because I thought it was almost like I wondered if whatever it was, had kind of almost as like a gift, had said, you can watch us, but don't bloody well say anything, Don't shop us. But anyway, I did shop them in the end because I couldn't keep a secret like that. But I didn't give my name away. I was used a false name, but the guy knew my real name. And he put this thing in the newspaper, and there was a few people came round. One couple had seen the same sort of thing, being or whatever it was I saw, or projection, as I did, but in the Denologie near Stonehaven, and it was floated above their car or something, and they didn't know about what we saw, or what I'd seen rather. And he was quite convinced by that because I'd not told. I mean, I had told people at school, I think, but it wasn't general knowledge at all. So these people that came forward, and some other people that came forward, that they'd seen things at the time, but again were too scared. And I did many years later, come across things on the internet that people had seen things around that area. So we were not the only people that had seen it, but we might have been the most interested people on the subject. I was interested, not because of some weird abductions and stuff like that, but because of the technology. And I thought, shit, if I can prove this and somehow get hold of that technology, it would be like a Nobel Prize. You would be proving that we were not the only life around. But it struck me many, many years later that maybe what we've been seeing wasn't as clear cut as we thought it was. I mean, we'd assumed as children, teenagers, that it was just clear cut. These were UFOs, these were aliens of some sort. And they were looking around. They weren't necessarily abducting people, but they were observing, just like rats in a maze, mice in a maze. That's exactly how I thought we were, and that's how I felt. I used to feel that, and I thought, shit, if people knew that, they really understood it, and maybe they know now, I wonder how they'd feel about it. They've been watching Coronation Street, and this thing's above their house doing something, but I don't know what they're doing. But that's what we thought. But then I thought, this is going to be the most boring job in the universe. Some creature sitting in that machine that we'd seen, or machines, every single night of the week. Didn't make sense. Didn't make sense at all. It's not a job that you do. And then it suddenly struck me more recently that it had to be automated, the whole thing, and perhaps the whole machine was automated. In fact, there may not have been any biological life there at all. That these were all machines sent God knows where from, and they were there to observe us, to see our reactions to certain people, obviously. They'd seen my reactions. I think what they did was, on the first night, is they projected something. I don't know how they did it in front of me. I don't think it was a real alien or anything like that. But something was projected to gauge my reaction to this. Just to check how people's knowledge is, to reaction to, if they'd actually spot that there was something unusual. I mean, if you're kind of in the jungle and there's gorillas around, they might spot humans, obviously, and they'd maybe just run away, but they'd never maybe think what they were doing there, and what the purpose was. Maybe they wanted to know if, we were curious about what they were doing. I don't know. But I thought eventually that there had to be AI. Now that we've got AI, it suddenly struck me, God, these things are definitely artificial intelligence machines gathering information. And one of them was a lookout, for sure, up high, and there's others down below doing the things. The one up above was, I don't know what, it was looking for planes or anything else that was coming the direction and sending a signal to the other one to tell it to, oh, hang on, there's something coming, guys. Down it would go, below the thing. And maybe if there was a couple of children around, might thought, well, let's just go in and see, gauge what their reaction is to this. See if they've got any intelligence here and they can figure it out. And, you know, as I say, I thought I was the nutter, but perhaps I was the one that, you know, first realised in that part of the world anyway, that there's more to life than just us. There is another thing. Now, where are they from is the other question. We all know that with our technology, we know through basic physics, the sheer distances to get to even our nearest star that we know of. I mean, there might be some huge planets further out that we don't know about. It's probably pretty cold if they were, you know, beyond the Pluto or whatever. But where are they coming from? We know that the speed of light, even at the speed of light, it would take like 4 years to get, or something like that, to get to Alpha Centauri system. That's the nearest, and we don't even know if they were coming from there. They could be from further away. So are they really coming at distance? And how could they, you know, would they be coming and going back home again for the weekend sort of thing? I doubt it very much. So, I mean, either they came from some mothership or were seeded throughout the galaxy in some way a long time ago. I mean, it could be that these things, just like we sent off Voyager to the, you know, into the distance. I mean, that's a very primitive machine. It's just going to float along with kind of no fuel eventually, just keep going in that direction, and in 60,000 years time or something it might get to the nearest star, and we'll have forgotten about it by then. We could be dead by then. If somebody had better technology than that, they might well send out a mothership in the hope that it can bring back in the future some information. And again, if you wind the clock forward, you know, that we've only had technology for modern technology in my lifetime, I would say, you know, because when I was born, the transistor was being used, but people were still using thermionic valves. In the TVs I was watching, there were still valves until, you know, 1970s or something like that. And even the radio I had was a valve radio. But they had transistor radios, though, in the 1960s. But, you know, going back to the wartime, Second World War in the up to 1945, it was all valve devices, thermionic valves. And the TV has been invented in primitive forms maybe 100 years now. Yes, we've known about chemistry and so on for a bit longer. Basic thermodynamics we've known about Newton's laws, of course, since in the 17th century or something like that, I think it is. Newton was around. Geniuses like that, everybody has built on their work. But in modern and recent times, I mean, we've come from, and that was at the 1920s when the Wright brothers or whatever was something like that. The first flew to the late 1968, we landed on the moon. Very short period of time we've had our technology. But can you imagine if we don't blow ourselves up, if we've still got this technology even in 1,000 years time, what level we're going? Now we've got AI. There's no telling what we can do. I mean, because we can almost suspend the human brain and get the machine to do a lot of the work, things that we could never even imagine doing. Fast forward 1 million years, and any intelligent life like ourselves, or we're still alive in 1 million years, any other life would see us like gods, because we would have mastered technology to such an extent we may be able to control matter itself. There's no telling what. I mean, it's easy, of course, to make these things up out of thin air. None of them have any basis in any fact. But the one fact that there is that these things do indeed exist. I've seen them myself. My sister has seen them. Other people have seen them, and now other people are talking about them. Thank you. So many years later, Mum, well, sorry, perhaps I'll rewind a little bit. My mother, Alison and I used to tell her about what we saw, and she'd never come out with us or anything like that. And Dad was too busy. I don't know why they weren't interested. But there's a few odd things that happened. My mother never kind of believed us. But then she used to go to the village in Muckles. Again, it would have been, I don't know what it was, quarter of a mile or something. You'd walk up there, walk back, and it would be the pitch black again. This would have been in the early 70s again, around 72, 73 maybe. But one night she was coming back, and she got to the bottom of the avenue where I'd seen this thing. And she says she got buzzed by this thing in the sky. She says it was all red lights, and oh my God, what is it? And she says it was... I thought it was my torch that attracted it, she said. And she says, don't go anywhere near these things. She says, don't know what the hell they are. So she never told anybody. But then, I don't know, I can't remember the exact, it must have been many years later. She knew this lady who was an ex-teacher who worked in Portlethen Primary School. I won't mention her name. Not that it would matter really. I mean, if anybody did want her name, I don't think she'd mind if she's still around. She used to be on the bus with my mother, because my mother worked in Aberdeen, I think, for a while, to do with the oil rigs on a magazine or something. And she knew this woman, and one day she'd mentioned it to her that we used to see. He said, "Oh, Thomas and Alison used to enter all this sort of rubbish, with I can't remember." And she maybe said she saw something, but she just wanted to stay away from it. She wasn't interested. And this lady said, "Oh God," she says, "it's not rubbish." She says, "Tell you what happened to us," she said. And this was her story, and I verified it because I later rang her. My mother had her phone number, and I gave her a ring, and I asked her the story, and it's the same. She said, so she told my mother the same story. In 1968, so that was 2 years before the main thing that went over our heads, me and Alison, because that was, 3 years. That was 71. So back in 68, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her father, her mother, herself, and I'm not sure there was anybody else in the car. There might have been another sibling or something. She would, I don't know how old she would have been older than me, probably. She was obviously older than me, I think. But anyway, they were in the car on their way back, and they got as far as a place called Portlethen, which is not far from Newton Hill, and Newton Hill is the next village up from Muckles. And their father saw this, who apparently never believed in anything like that. He always thought it was complete and utter rubbish, and a lot of people did. I mean, it wasn't just him. They got as far as Portlethen, and they saw this thing like a fire in the sky. It's borrowing it from the book. The father said, "Oh my God, there's a plane about to crash," and all they could see was this like flames coming from this thing, and it was coming into Portlethen of all places, in the back of beyond, heading for a field. And apparently our father stopped the car because there's a phone box there, I think, if I remember rightly, and he says, "I'll better ring for the ambulance, but this is going to be a serious tragedy," and he just got in the phone box sort of thing, and they were all looking at this thing, expecting it to come smash into the field not that far away. They were kind of worried, but she said just before it got within a certain the height of the trees or something, she says it suddenly just stopped in midair and just hovered in midair. And she says, and her words were, because remember we'd been seeing these things at night apart from in the early years. This is in broad daylight. She says, it was just like two dinner plates, she said, stuck together, one above the other. She says, it was metal, like shiny metal. I couldn't see any windows or anything like that, she says. And it gave it a puff of smoke, she says, every now and again, which is very strange. But anyway, she says it gave it a puff of smoke. And once it hovered in midair, she says it slowly went towards, it would have been towards Cockney or somewhere like that, inland, towards, that would have been to the west. Again, very, very low down, just like most of our things were very low down. And it just went inland. And they were kind of just sitting there thinking, God, what the hell was that? And her father apparently was just totally, he didn't know what to say or what to do. But as I say, back then, unless you're a very, very confident person, you don't go to newspapers and say, hey, I just saw this thing, and it was like a flying saucer. Because certainly then you're going to get really, ragged about that big time and called some kind of nutcase. Even though there's more than, even whole families in places like Wales have seen things, and it doesn't make any difference whether the whole family's seen it or not. They still think you're a complete nutcase, certainly in those days. So I don't think they told anybody until maybe they told my mother then, and that was it. I don't really know. So I'd not. That was the kind of, to me, confirmation that there'd been something there even before we'd seen the first time. It's probably what we were seeing, 3 of them or whatever. They always were low down on the horizon, above the trees and things. And I think I'd read somewhere that that's good for avoiding radar, but the other ones were higher up. I remember saying to my sister, surely they're picking these things up in, Aberdeen. I've got a radar system, it's like 10 miles south of Aberdeen. They must be picking up these things. And she says, well, maybe they've got something. This was in the 70s. Maybe they've got something that absorbs the radio waves. And she wasn't the engineer. She was going to be studying geology. And I said, absorbs the radio waves. What sort of kind of crap is that? There's no such thing as that. And it just suddenly struck me that she'd kind of made a proclamation on what was to become stealth technology. And they probably, even we'd probably discovered that around that time. And yes, it probably did, and maybe because of its shape, if anything else, because if they really were thin, maybe the radar image wasn't much to get a reflection of, or they put it down as clutter, because I don't really know, but then we're looking for particular things. I have heard that one of the reasons they started seeing these things, the US took interest, was because their radar got upgraded and they could suddenly pick up things they never picked up before, and they'd still ignore them. But then when the pilots of the plane started seeing them, of course, they thought, oh my God, there's something odd going on here. And I later, people asked questions, when I was at college, why didn't you just take a picture of them? And I didn't have a bloody camera anyway. I did buy a camera when I was at college, but it was a crappy one. I didn't know anything about photography until later. I asked somebody, how the hell do I take a picture of something that's very small, at night, like a star or something? I just used to say a star because I didn't want to alarm people. And he said, oh, you need a very fast film and you need a proper camera, like an SLR camera, and it's got to be set up properly, and a fast film. And I was using like one of these little tiny cameras like this, and all you get is a streak of red or something, and it's like, wouldn't have convinced anybody there was anything there at all. And there's more to the story probably than that, in that a few odd things that I never really at the time thought much about. I've never really been, because this thing was over our heads and it never did anything to us. I've never really believed in abductions things. I'm not saying it might not have happened, but I'm saying I wouldn't have thought they would be very common, for the simple reason that unless it was something like out of the X-Files where they're trying to create a genetic crossbreed of humans or something. If you want blood, you can get blood from a blood bank or something. It's not difficult to find out about humankind, and you can monitor our TV and radio and find out just about anything about humans. So, and see the point in that, and to come to think about it, I couldn't see the point of them even being above our houses. But obviously, there was something that they were of interest. They must have been looking through infrared or something. I don't know, to see what were in the houses. Okay, so now I've got Alison, my sister, who was with me in all these times, such a long time ago, back in the early 70s. She's never appeared in books or said anything really about the subject ever until this would be the first time. So hi Alison, how are you doing? Yeah.
Hi there.
So I just want to know to tell people of what your experiences were back then. Maybe when the first time we saw it together, those things together, and maybe when there was, what your thoughts on the subject was, just to tell people that really they did exist. I'm not just making it up, kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the first time, to be honest. I remember I thought it was probably Dad and yourself that saw them first. Oh, I can hear my own voice on that.
Do you not remember when we stood underneath one at that time?
Yeah, that was later though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We'd actually seen them quite a few times by then, and I remember that really clearly. And you'd come back from school and you'd seen them, and it was still quite light, wasn't it? Probably about 6 o'clock or maybe earlier.
That would be right.
Which was really weird.
Yeah.
And it was probably a summer evening or late August or something like that, because it was so light. And you came up the road and said, "Oh, well, I can see them," and you went round the corner, and then there was one literally right over the field behind the house, and we stood right underneath it almost, didn't we?
Yeah. Yes.
That was something else, and that was amazing, because I'd always wanted to know what. Saw these red lights that used to flash on and off, and I couldn't work out what was causing the lights to do that. And then we stood underneath, and I remember thinking, they're not flashing on and off. There's a circle of lights that go around underneath.
Yes.
And it was really weird. I could actually see it properly, almost like it was showing itself to us. Now I think about it.
Yeah. I couldn't understand that either, because, as you say, from the distance it looked like one red light that just went on and off. But when we were underneath it, there was a circle of them. It didn't make any sense. I can't remember whether those lights went flashed down in a circle or not, but I can't remember that much. But I do remember looking up at them, and it was you that run up there. It wasn't me, because I was still scared.
I wanted to have a look. I wanted to see it properly.
Yeah.
And I was hoping it would land.
Yeah.
Something weird about me. I wasn't at all bothered about it.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I was really wanting to see it, and I was amazed that if it would land, then we could meet somebody.
Yeah. Exactly. And in those days we thought that there were people, sitting in there in a cockpit somewhere, didn't we? I mean, that's what we thought in those days.
Yeah, we imagined that. I doubt that was the case.
Yes.
But who knows? You couldn't really see anything like that. Just underneath was. I think the lights went round in a circle on and off.
Yeah.
And it looked from the distance like they were flashing. And I remember, now I know why they do that. I was standing underneath. It was a silver disc, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Well, it was definitely circular. There's no. I mean, we couldn't see the top of it. I could just see the bottom of the thing.
Yeah.
Um, but did you have any thoughts as to what we were actually looking at? I mean, it wasn't obviously a helicopter.
Definitely.
It wasn't a helicopter or a
No.
plane, obviously.
Nothing like a helicopter.
Yeah,
Definitely thought it was some sort of alien craft.
yeah. I think we both thought
Um,
that. Yeah, at the time.
yeah, they had moved around, having seen it in the dark and seen three or four. They always came in threes, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah,
And they'd move around and they'd shoot from one place to another. They didn't move like an aeroplane. They
no,
didn't go in a straight line. And I always remember when there was an aeroplane in the sky or anything like that, they would dip out of the way
yes,
so the aeroplane couldn't see them.
yes. I remember that. Yeah, that was very peculiar. I think you'd spotted that first. You spotted quite a lot of things because I remember saying to you, "How come the radar can't pick it up?" Yeah, in Dice Airport or something. And I remember you said, "Oh, maybe they've got something that absorbs radar." And I thought, "Oh, that must be rubbish." But I mean, but that was before we knew about stealth technology. That could well have been the case. And of course, they were flying very low. About the tree height or just above the trees, and that's hard to pick up as well, I think, on radar.
Hanging over people's houses, weren't they? That's what we used to watch.
But I can't understand. Can you think of any reason why they'd want to do that? I mean, people are just sitting watching TV or having a meal or something. What is it that they?
I think they were studying us.
Yeah,
That's what I always thought.
yeah, but
Like you might do with a creature somewhere else, like a scientist might
yeah,
go and
okay,
study an environment somewhere.
yes,
And they were just interested. Maybe they were doing some sort of project whereby they watched what was happening with us over a period of time.
but how come they never
We
came out?
don't know if they're still doing that. They might still be doing that.
I think so. Yes,
But we don't live anymore, so we're not clear that they're not visiting. And they visited for years, didn't they?
yes,
That was the other thing.
yeah, but
You used to go back and see them still.
oh, absolutely.
You,
But
when you,
But later, I think I'm not sure about the much later. Like in the 80s and 90s, if they were exactly the same things that we were seeing back then. But certainly in the 70s, it was always the same thing. There were always these red lights, and because we'd been under one, I knew exactly what we were looking at. I mean,
yeah.
the other things I didn't know what they were, but this was. We knew exactly what they were. They were circular from the underside. I mean, they couldn't argue with that. But I just couldn't figure out what their purpose. They didn't seem to be hostile in any way. But do you remember
No.
I was saying earlier in my video, which you'll see later, that do you remember how mum used to say that dad used to say that he used to have these dreams where he was getting operated on. Yeah, you should. Yeah,
He did, didn't he?
yeah. And I was just wondering. I mean,
Who knows?
yeah, yeah. I
Maybe
have.
they came. They came.
Well, Dad
Yeah.
was a Native American, so they've got a history of what they call. I mean, I was talking to the tribe, the Cree tribe, and they were saying that they call them the Sky People. And
Yes.
so they've got a history of communications or something with such things. But I couldn't get in touch. It's only the elders that know about it apparently, and you have to kind of meet them face to face and give tobacco or something before they'll tell you about it. It's not kind of common knowledge what they get up to really. But the fact that that whole area was kind of under surveillance, and you can call it a research project if you like. It was there, is a little bit to me concerning in the way that the people were kind of blissfully ignorant, that they didn't know what was happening in their own backyard. I mean, they didn't know. They were sitting watching TV, whatever, and every night these things were coming over and looking at them.
At the same time.
Yes, yes.
At the same time, wasn't it?
And always at the same time.
That was the amazing thing. We knew when they were going to come after a while.
Yeah.
Well, they maybe came over again later, but we would have been asleep. But there were
Yeah.
certain times when they came, and I think that we had cousins who lived further down the coast, didn't we?
Yeah.
And they said they'd seen them when they went to work early in the morning.
That's
so
right.
4 in the morning and things. So
Yeah,
perhaps.
that's great. I can't remember his name now. Alan was his name. Yeah,
Alan, yeah.
he was a milkman, I think, and
Yeah.
he saw them. Also, as one of our other cousins from the Mains, that other farm that we all kind of originated from. Forgot where was it? Got the Mains and Netherley. Brian. He told me this was in the 90s that he said that there was something in his field one night, and it was like a light.
Wow.
And he'd never, know what it was. He was working late, and he just looked and he saw this thing in his field. And as he looked at it, after a couple of minutes, it just shot right up into the sky and disappeared. Because I told him what we'd seen, and I thought he was going to burst into laughter because, farmers are very, ordinary, down to earth people, and they don't, they can't be done with nonsense and rubbish. And I thought he's going to think this is just a joke, But yeah, he'd seen them as well. Well, he'd seen one anyway, which kind of surprised me really, quite a lot. But I think now my own feeling is I don't think there was a pilot in them. I think it was just a machine, just gathering information. That's my feeling, and it. Because I mean, who would want to be in a machine like that every night of the week? I mean, you'd have to be pretty. It would be a terrible job. I mean, just floating around over people's houses, switching on a recording. I mean, you could automate it. It would make much more sense to do that, wouldn't it, than something actually being there. So I don't think there was anybody in. Personally, I don't think there was anything in them at all. But I mean, the fact they were real, you can't really argue. I mean, they were. I mean, I just don't know why other people weren't at the time, alarmed by them, really. Okay.
There's nothing much you could do about it, even if you were alarmed. We never told anyone really, except among ourselves, because we didn't think anyone would believe us. So.
And that's absolutely true, but it was worse than that, because those were the days before the X-Files. When the X-Files came out in the 90s, I know it kind of used that as a marker. The X-Files was opened people's eyes, even though of course a lot of it was just made up, of course, but some of it was based on actual accounts, and people got a bit more open, I think, to such things. But back in the 70s, I can remember people, you get really ridiculed if you said anything. I mean, they basically want to lock you up and think you're off out of your mind or something. Because that happened to me with the teacher. When I told the teacher, he thought I'd been drinking or something. So you couldn't reason with people. You couldn't reason with people at all. I mean, to me, I thought it was a fantastic discovery that we'd made. But
yeah, just don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone.
Okay. Well, thanks, Alison, for that, and I'm going to put that in the film. I'll just stop. Okay, now let's have a look at where we were and where it all happened. It's a map of Scotland. You all know where Scotland is. It's northern part of the United Kingdom. There's Ireland, Wales, and there's Norway. There was some funny sightings in Norway around the same time, actually, up here, up in the north, actually, in a place called Hasdalen. But they were a bit different, as they seemed to be like plasma balls of light that just sort of floated around the place. But nobody really knows, I think, even now. So we both went to school in Stonehaven. It's a lovely little seaside town, really. We never knew how lucky we were, really, living near there. In the summertime, it's beautiful. It can be really cold in the winter. Aberdeen is a lovely city, the granite city. And a lot of the old part of it is made out of granite. Now, we didn't live in the city, of course. We lived near, and I say near, the village of Muckles. Now, we didn't live in Muckles, I make that very clear. In fact, we lived, if we can zoom it, right near here where it says St Ternan's Church. There's a house right next to there. It's not shown on this map because I could probably see it from the sky, of course, but there's a house there next to it, right next to the church. There's a couple of little houses there. Now let's have a quick look. Now we came home. I came home that first night, in my recollection anyway, from Stonehaven. So the bus took me back. It was after the rest of the kids had gone because I was at my piano lessons, and I got off at the crossroads there. The crossroads is to the east is Muckles, and to the left you go inland towards Cookney, which is up here. It's a couple of miles away. Let's go now to the street view. There we go. So I'm a bit north here. Let's move down that way a bit. Oh, it's in the way. Yeah, so, I see. So yes, so that's Muckles in that direction. Can't see it from here. There's the sea. Now, back in those days, there was no dual carriageway. That was a later thing. There was only like two, would have been about that width, the road. It wasn't very wide. Well, maybe a bit wider than that. But. And here's our road. Here's a bus stop that, although I don't think there was a physical bus stop. There was a bus stop, but not a place you could sit down like there is now. I notice now there's a sign there for St Ternan's Church. I don't remember that being there before. Anyway, so I'd walk up here. Oh, this is what we used to call the Big Wood, or I think its proper name is the plantation or something. Winewood Plantation or something, or Windward. Is it Windward? Something like that. Look at an ordnance map, you'll see it. So I would have been standing here, coming off. I just had my torch. I couldn't see. I know Alison said she could. She thought it was a bright night. I didn't. I don't remember it being that light. I mean, but of course there was no street lights. Still no street lights there, but there was no street lights back in Muckles either. And these houses here didn't exist. Those are a new thing that in the last 20 something years, maybe, I don't know when they appeared, but certainly weren't there when I was there. There wasn't all this kind of hedge row either. I mean, before, is that whins, I think, or something? I'm just trying to see what they are. Maybe not. Anyway, I was walking up, and there was this red light flashing away up here somewhere. Over here, maybe over here. And there's another one over this direction, and another one ahead of me. And I think actually that night there might have been four actually, but I can't be 100% certain. There was at least three. They always seem to come in threes anyway. And as I walked up this road with my torch, because I didn't want to end up in the ditch here, this thing seemed to be moving, with me. But again, it could have been like a parallax error thing. Sometimes you think things are moving and they're not. But it turns out it was actually moving, as far as I remember, because as I kept going, these things, that one moved. There was one ahead of me, didn't seem to move. And it was like I was kind of surrounded, but I couldn't get to my house because there was one there, and one ahead. But I wasn't thinking it was anything that serious. I probably just thought it was helicopters or something, although I couldn't hear anything. I got as far as the avenue here. Our house is at the top, at the back there. You can't see it because of the trees. There's a house here, two houses there, and that's it. This is Seaview Cottage, it's called. My great auntie Lizzie used to own that, apparently. My great auntie Sarah owned the other house, and she was left it by her father, who was from I think it was the great. I was going to say great uncle George. I'm not sure if it was my grandfather was George, great grandfather rather. She was left the houses, given money for them, and then they ended up living next to one another. So they owned those two houses, but not when I was there. So we only owned the house at the back. Other people lived there. And now, when I was looking at this thing over here in the sky, it came down and down and down and down and down and down. I thought, what the hell, it's going to land or something? But there is a camber on the road here you probably can't see. And I thought maybe it's just gone out of view. But I thought, I'm getting out of here anyway. And I looked ahead of me, and there was something standing right by the gate. There was a gate there. Can't probably show it from here. Now, there used to be a white gate. I might have changed colour. Actually, it might have been green at one time. Dad might have painted it. It was never closed. It was always open. So I didn't see any point in having it, to be honest. I've taken it off now, I see, the new owners. I was standing there, so I don't know what that distance is. It's not very far. This thing stood in front of me, and when it did, I literally just froze, absolutely solid. It's not like something was fired at me. At least I don't think so. I just couldn't move. I've never been in such a state of shock as that in my life. It was just incredible. And I even had enough time to think, what on earth is that? I didn't know whether it was going to move towards me or not. In the end, I don't know how I did it, but I plucked up enough courage to move forward. I thought, well, I just better move. I thought maybe it's an old person standing there, because it had like a gown, a long gown on, but a sort of glowing head. So it didn't look quite human, but I thought maybe, because I think the light on the scullery here of the neighbours was on, I thought maybe it's just a, trick of the light or something, which was illuminating something. But when I took one step forward, this thing just disappeared. Never to be seen again, never saw it again. And I rushed up home and then came back again with Alison. And when I came down, I couldn't see anything. There was nothing. And then I said to Alison, look, it's funny, Alison, the one I saw came down over here somewhere, and I'd literally not finished the sentence when this thing started moving up again, as if it was coming off the ground or something, or had been very low, and was up here somewhere. And she ran off up here, past the church. The church is here on the left-hand side. I don't know if you can see the church. Church is in the back there. That's the manse where the canon lived, Canon Buchanan. And I also got my piano lessons there. Anyway, she went up to about here, or we went up. I caught up with her, and the thing came over our heads just about here somewhere. As I say, these houses were not there at the time. It's a huge number of houses, and there was nothing there. There was a farm at the end. Burn of Feppy farm, and there's a house, a farm up here called Greenheads Farm, another one called the Floors further up, and then you go up to Cookney. So there's not many houses around really. There was another farm beyond, sort of near Cairnhill, beyond Burn of Feppy. But it came over our heads, and we were looking up at it about here. And once we saw the little red lights as Alison was talking about, and it then very slowly moved back across. I don't know if it moved over the church or somewhere here or there, and it ended up over the so-called Big Wood that we called it, the plantation, which is over here again. You can't see the damn thing because of the trees. Go back. That's Muckles Village in the background there. You can see it now. There's the plantation. I've got an interesting anecdote about that as well. So there wasn't. Looks like there was a lot of trees there now. It was mostly kind of whins, gorse, I think people call it, rabbits, and there was horses there. That belongs to the. I think it belonged to the. Muckles Castle. Anyway, it was over there, and Alison, I think, watched it till about 11 or 12 o'clock at night or something, and it just stood. There was one. I don't know about what happened to the others. That was the first night only. I remember happened just about every night, but we were never underneath it again, to my knowledge. I can't ever remember being underneath one. But that's when we knew what it was. I mean, that it wasn't a normal aircraft at all. Down here, by the way, it just goes into the fields. It's called the Old Coach Road. It takes you, I don't know where it takes you, to Stonehaven or something. Comes out somewhere. Well, it used to anyway. Anyway, that's the terrain, so to speak. So we'd come down here and look around this area without, again, those houses. I'll just briefly take you, have a very short visit. I don't want to drone on too long. You can look this up for yourself, of course. There's Bonafepi Farm. I think it's probably gone now. You can see the buildings. Some of it was burnt down, I read in the news. None of these were here. Some birds in the sky, you can see them. There used to be sheep here sometimes. It varied. Sometimes there'd be, on the next field there'd be neeps, turnips, so to say, Swedes. That was the farmer from Bonafepi. One of them seemed to land the back there once. That's the church, I think we can see. St. Ternan's Church, I think it is. Looking back from here. Is that it? No, is that it? That's it there. I think that's it. That's the manse. That's the church. It should be a spire. It's hard to see from through the trees. These things would actually hover. I'd see them quite a few nights over these trees. They'd be very low, sort of following the tree line. Just, if you kept following this tree line, you came out the back of our house, by the way, which is again a bit worrying. Up at the top here is Greenhead's farm, and they go over there. As Alison was talking about, they stay over the house, which is the farmhouse, and then this is the byre, the barn, and they go over there as well. And they go all over this area, but wherever there was houses, they seem to end up over the rooftops of the house. I don't know what would happen now. I mean, there's so many houses here, but none of them were there before. It'd be interesting. I doubt there'd be much going on now. It'd be very much in the open. As you can see, back then there weren't many people around this part. Now, I didn't see them over Muckles village. I've sometimes in the past called them the Muckles UFOs, but there was never anything above Muckles. Maybe there was, I don't know why. I mean, there was more people there. You think if they were trying to see about people, or maybe they went at a different time, I don't know. But I would have thought they would be spotted quite easily if they were there. And I can't for the life of me understand why people didn't say something here either. Oh, there's the church. You can see the spire there. The bell used to ring on a Sunday, waking us up if we weren't going to church ourselves. We didn't go to that church. That's a Episcopalian, which is a bit like, it's a Scottish church. It was a bit like Church of England. We were with the Church of Scotland, which is a bit different. And that's the manse for, where the canon lived. I once saw him looking out his window. I knew him quite well because he even gave me piano lessons once after his wife couldn't. He's a very nice man. And I could see him looking out his window here. Same when there was things around here, flying up here somewhere, I don't know, around the fields in the sky, and he was looking at it as well. So pretty sure he knew what the hell was going on, if nobody else did. Well, now the epilogue, and I showed the film to a few people and to get some feedback before I sort of release it, if you like. And I really realised I made a few bloopers as well. The obvious one was that you may have spotted was that I'd said that we've had flight, I think, since the 1920s. Of course, the first manned flight was 1903. It was long before then. But my point still stands that we got from 1903 to, and I got the second date wrong as well. It was in 1969 that we landed on the moon. What was that? Roughly 70 odd years or something. We came a very long way in a very short time with technology, and that was my point anyway. The other thing I think I made a mistake was when I mentioned the lady who was a teacher. She, I think I said that they saw what they saw at Port Lethen, and it wasn't. It was actually Camich Moir that they saw what they saw, and that was Camich Moir, if I can find it. I'm at Aberdeen. There's Port Lethen. There's Camich Moir. I don't think Camich Moir's got anything. It was just like a bus stop almost. I mean, there was I think at Camich Moir there was a bus stop and a church. I think, I'm sure we went to church, got off there or something to go to church. There's Elsick House, which is, I think, where, I'm not sure, but I thought that was where the Duke of Fife or something lived around there. So that was at the other side of where we were watching things from here, north. And that was where a couple of twins worked, I think. I can't remember now, to be honest. It's such a long time. But anyway, the other point I was going to make was that a couple of friends commented on this, and they said, asked a few questions. One of the questions was, when you were underneath this thing, was there a downdraft? And that's a very good question, because if you've ever been under a helicopter, and I've never been under a helicopter, despite the fact I've been under perhaps been under an alien craft or something. I've never been under a helicopter. But if you've ever watched TV shows and on the Vietnam War and everything, you see that when the helicopter's not far off the ground, how well, first of all, the sheer noise, they can't hear what they're saying, and also the grass is all blown away, and when you're underneath it, it's like a huge wind that blows. And the answer is there was nothing like that. I mean, it was just totally silent. So it kind of rules out there being anything to do with helicopters at all, or a Harrier jump jet as well, which would be very. There was another plane around, I think at the time, it was still around, called the Osprey. I don't think we had it in the UK, but it's a propeller one that sort of turns into, it can hover as well, but again, same I think applies to that. And they did hang around for very long periods of time in the evening, hours and hours and hours. But nevertheless, being sceptical at the time, I did think, and it was a few years later, I didn't want to do this, but I thought I've got to do it. And I rung up the airport in Dice, which is, I can't remember where it is, further north at Aberdeen or something. And I asked them, and I said, do you guys have helicopters, that you know of that's around our area? Because, I think I just said, I think there's helicopters flying all around our area. What are they doing there? And the guy replied to me in the sort of Doric accent. It's very Aberdonian, and I'll translate it for you in a minute. But he said his very words were, "Dinna be feelmin. Fit would we be putting helicopters around your area for?" As sort of indicating that it was a real backwater. Translated, that means don't be stupid. What would there be helicopters around your area for? Especially in 2s and 3s. When I thought maybe they were flying from a hotel or something off to the oil rigs, which were goodness knows where, off here somewhere a long way, because the oil trade, the surveillance for oil had started. So I thought it was something like that initially, I thought, until we'd been underneath it, of course. But I thought I'd just better make sure first, and it was a resounding no. He also mentioned the Air Force Base. This was my friend mentioned the Air Force Base at Edsall. And I'd always meant to contact. I never actually got the courage to go. There's an American Air Force base south of Stonehaven at a place called Edsall. I'm not sure what they do, to be honest. And I always sort of wanted to pay them a visit and say, by the way, this is what we've been seeing, like every night of the week. And could you tell us what you think it is? But I never really got the courage to do that. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't them, because again, there's certainly nothing in the scientific literature to suggest that we've got anything that can or could at that time do anything, could handle that kind of technology. We also, some of the younger people might be thinking, it could be a drone or something. Now in today's age, in 2024, of course, 2023, you've probably seen the Chinese have got incredible systems where you can take hundreds and hundreds of drones and make them into a swarm and make like a virtual object in the sky. And of course, if that were around now, back then, you could have sort of faked some kind of craft, with 20 or 30 of these small things and made them fly together. Surprised somebody hasn't done that. It's probably has been done actually. But back in 1971, we didn't have these MEMS, they're called. These are the small gyros and accelerometers that you get in integrated circuit format. They've got little moving parts on them as well, some of them. We didn't have them until about, I think, early 2000s or late 1990s, I think. I remember when they came out, and they revolutionised the drone industry for these small quadcopters, as we used to call them. And that's how they became possible. I've done a few videos on them using the one of the common chips. The same chips used in your phone, of course, where you can determine what various things on your phone when you reorientate your phone. It's an accelerometer and a gyro, which are all on the same chip. And I've done videos on Kalman filters and how to use those, to convert that into position from velocity and acceleration, which was something they did on the Apollo flights, but they didn't have the MEMS sensors. They used real stabilized platforms. They had actual gyros or laser gyros. I'm not sure what they used exactly for their inertial navigation to get to the moon and get back again. But I also wanted to, apart from those corrections, I wanted to mention some other things. Back in 2012, about 12 years ago, there was a few things appeared in the news about Scotland, and I wasn't living there at the time, which was this story here was in the Daily Mail, but it was in a few places. This happened in Fraserburgh in northern Scotland. I'm just going to show you where that is. It's not everybody's from Scotland who are watching this. There's Fraserburgh. So from Stonehaven to Fraserburgh, I'll do a quick check on the measure the distance. And now I'm going to move this. So it's about, I think we would live somewhere like that. That's about 45 miles, 73 kilometres distance away from Muckles kind of Cookney area from where we were, so it's not exactly very far away. This couple, not only there's craft appeared outside their house or something, and they took a photograph, a video of it, and that's a still from it. You can see lots of little lights around it. The lights that we saw in ours, though, was underneath it, rather than on the edge, unless, of course, that it's orientated in some way. It's maybe tilted, but you can. It's an interesting video if you want to watch it. And it's a lady that was hovering over our house actually, in Aberdeenshire for 4 hours. It's not something that happens every day. And as I say, helicopters do make a hell of a din. If there was one hovering over your house, first of all, it'd probably be illegal, but I don't think you can do that. There's laws against putting helicopters over people's houses. unless they're looking for a criminal or something. And that's a long period. That's quite a long time as well for that. These people didn't believe in anything like that, of course, but it would happen nevertheless. That's interesting enough, were it not for the fact that a couple of days later there was another story appeared in the Daily Record this time. A green figure appeared on camera at an Aberdeenshire home, and again that was a very short distance from Fraserburgh. They got some of it before it disappeared. It just looks like a green line. I don't know what it was, and it sort of vanished. There's the picture. They said little green man, but it's not really a little green man, but maybe there was some form to it before. But again, that could be some kind of projection like I saw. Mine was bigger than that. What I saw was like the size of it wasn't little, so the size of an adult easily. So it's not the same. But they also saw that. In the early 2000s, I was invited to, by that time, Malcolm Robinson, who's an investigator and written books on these kind of subjects, had informed, the Grampian Television, it's in the north of Scotland, it doesn't exist anymore, but it made a TV show called Beyond Explanation, and it had Graham Cox on it, of all people, the famous actor. So Brian Cox, not Graham Cox, Brian Cox, not to be confused with the astronomer, who is different. You didn't have him on it, but he is here here.
With each reported sighting, experts are becoming more convinced that something strange is happening in our sky.
And so I appeared on that as well. They took quite a nice picture of because I wasn't there when they took the picture, because I was still in New Zealand. That's again the picture. That's where we used to live here at the back, and that's the road I came up at night, and they tell this story.
It's a small village just south of Aberdeen, and on the 13th of December that year, young Tom was making his way home alone after a piano lesson.
And then it interviews me about it. But the trouble with it, I mean, I think I'm glad they did it, but the trouble with it was there wasn't enough time for me to explain everything, and I think people got the wrong impression that this was a one-off thing that happened that night on the 13th of December. And as you can see by our video and talking to my sister as well, these things happened every single night of the week. It wasn't just a one-off occurrence. And there was some sort of false information the newspapers took out of it, that I'd moved to New Zealand to get away from them. That was way off the mark. I moved to New Zealand just to get another job. I didn't move here for that reason at all. Although I have to say, when I was younger, going to college in England was actually quite a good move, because I was kind of got away from them then. Although I kind of, in a funny sort of way, I enjoyed watching them as well, even though I was kind of still scared for years and years of what the hell I was looking at. I didn't know. And then, of course, not that long ago, but in 2004, there happened these sightings from the USS Nimitz, I think they're called, the so-called Tic Tac UFOs. And you've probably, those that haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure you would have seen these pictures taken from the F-16s or something, fighters. What had happened was that this USS Nimitz had the best radar in the world or something, some new radar system fitted, and they started picking up objects and things, and at the same time the aircraft were looking at them as well and following them and tracking them. Sorry, it's a bit loud. and they had them on in their sights, and they zoomed off at various speeds, and they didn't look like the things that we saw. Of course, they were various shapes. Ones looked like a tic tac, which was like those mints that you eat. I think that's why it was called a tic tac. And others looked like a gimbal structure, and others looked like a cube and a sphere inside a cube. I heard, which is very unusual. When I heard of the cube, I thought, "Oh my God, the Borg have landed," from Star Trek. But no. So there's a bit of controversy over these as to what they were actually seeing, whether it's real or not. But as you probably know, at the time of making this film, they're going through Congress in the United States trying to get what they call disclosure, and there's somebody who says that the Americans know a lot more than they're letting on about these things. But I'll just leave it at that, because I don't really know enough about that to comment one way or the other. I'd rather just give the information that I had.